Do you know other people who are in the same situation?
Oh, yes. We have a lot. Unfortunately, and I think probably the thing that tears me up more than anything is the fact that I recommended Madoff to a number of people. And they lost their money, and I'll never stop feeling responsible for that. They were all close family and friends.
Len Forrest and his friends thought they were part of a small, exclusive group of investors lucky enough to have a connection with Bernie Madoff. And because they thought they were making 12% a year, they weren't inclined to ask a lot of questions. Harry Markopolos called it the classic affinity scam.
An affinity scam is when you prey on groups that are similar in nature to yourself. So I'm Greek. If I was going to run an affinity scam, I would run it on the Greek-American community here. Bernie was Jewish, so he ran it on the Jewish community in the United States, but that wouldn't get him enough customers because he always needed new money to keep the scheme going.
Over time, Madoff extended his reach from New York to Palm Beach, where he enlisted hundreds of wealthy clients, many of them recruited from his own country clubs. And he also made connections that gave him entree to Europe and the hedge fund capital of America, Greenwich, Connecticut.
It was here that Bernie Madoff made some of his biggest deals with large investment firms that were willing to feed him billions of dollars of their clients' money to manage. And in return, Bernie Madoff agreed to pay these so-called feeder funds a fortune in annual fees. The largest of the feeder funds was the Fairfield Greenwich Group. How much money did Fairfield make off Bernie Madoff every year?
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
If you're a feeder fund, what are you supposed to do for those hundreds of millions of dollars?
You're supposed to identify the world's best hedge fund managers and invest only in them, and you're supposed to make sure they're not running Ponzi schemes.
The real steroids here were the feeder funds. That's what made it an international Ponzi scheme.
Attorney David Boies is one of the most prominent lawyers in the country and is representing Fairfield Greenwich investors who lost nearly $7 billion when Madoff went under. They're suing the firm for gross negligence, claiming it failed to investigate Madoff thoroughly or monitor his activities as it promised to do in its marketing materials.
Analysis of portfolio composition, portfolio stress testing, risk management, asset verification. Do you think that really happened?
No, we know it didn't happen because we know all they did was turn the money over to Bernie Madoff, and they did that for 20 years.
They did nothing.
They essentially did nothing except lose their investors' money and enjoy very luxurious lifestyles from the money they took out.
Walter Noel, one of the founding partners of Fairfield Greenwich, declined to talk to us and was reportedly lying low with his family at their compound on the private island of Mystique. But in a statement to 60 Minutes, his firm said that he too was a victim of Bernie Madoff, that it had placed too much trust in his then impeccable reputation, and in the fact that there had been multiple reviews of Madoff by the SEC.
Mr. Madoff, what do you have to say for yourself?
In the end, Harry Markopolos had been right about Bernie Madoff. He would be going to prison, but not because of anything that Harry or the SEC did. In a bad economy, Madoff's lies simply collapsed under their own weight.
No one was investigating Mr. Madoff at the end.
So he turned himself in before anybody in a position of authority began a serious investigation.
That's typically how the SEC does it. They come in after the crime has been committed. They toe tag the victims, count the bodies, and try to figure out who the crooks were after the fact, which does none of us any good.